What is happening out there, rotoscouts baseball fans? Wednesday afternoon show. Happy hump day. Couple minutes late getting started. Apologies about that. I was just grabbing all the lineups, making sure everything was configured properly to get into the show. Looks like we got a good group already hanging out, having a little bit of discussion in the chat. Just so everybody knows, we opened up the football channels in the Discord earlier today. Not a ton of activity in there just yet, but pop in there, share your thoughts on the football slates. I put in a DFS channel. It'll be focused for DFS, and I also added a season-long best ball channel for discussion on around waiver pickups and priorities and injuries and strategy for season long and all of that. Little late in draft season, obviously, but still a week to go, so still some drafts coming up. I'm sure there can be some draft thoughts in there, and then going on through the season, we'll have some discussions each week about what's happening for season long. The primary focus is always going to be on DFS. We're probably not going to do any kind of focused season long content. I don't think, unless somebody out there is thinking they want to write for no pay. They want to write like a waiver pickup column or something like that. Maybe I could pop that on the site, or maybe if I find myself with an abundance of free time, which I don't really expect, maybe we'll start doing that. But focus is always on DFS. Still got the baseball channel over in the Discord live and running like crazy. A lot of talk in there earlier today. A lot going on, obviously. So make sure you're in the Discord. Link is down the bottom in the description. If that one's not working anymore, let me know. I'll update it. You can also hit me up on Twitter. The handle is @rotoscouts, or my personal handle there is @digitalb21. Feel free to DM me on either one of those. I can get you a link into the Discord if you're not in there already. I suspect most of you guys are already in there, even though there's some people chat, some people don't. Just like on YouTube here, we get a lot of views with people who don't necessarily say hi or chime in the chat, but we appreciate all those guys, and I appreciate all the guys hanging out already talking. We've got D here, we've got Po DJ and Stoner from Garden City, Colorado, we've got Calvin Dunn's here, Matt Tomlinson, Larry C's here, Michael Knack is here. Apparently pitchers hate Michael Knack. Why? What's up, Michael? Just because of how bad the pitchers are on this slate? Is that what you're referring to? Because this is one of the ugliest pitching slates I can remember in a long, long time. Very, very top-heavy one. It's going to be interesting to go through. Larry says the night slate doesn't look great either. Yeah, not so good there. Hate playing Astros against the Red Sox for Matt Tomlinson. King of Smack's in the chat. What's going on, King of Smack? Jake Swales is here. Hurricane day for Jake. Yeah, hopefully everybody in Florida stayed safe, avoided flooding, avoided rains and winds and everything going on down there. I haven't looked at weather. Is there any weather fallout for this slate around the league from that? They have a the game in Florida's got a roof, right? Yeah, no weather around the league. Winds blowing out in Colorado, apparently. Yikes. Winds blowing out to right in New York, apparently. Thank you, Kevin Ronth over at RG, for your dedicated weather reporting that helps us out quite a bit. We are not professional weather people over here. So let's get into this one. EB's here. What's up, EB? Yeah, winds blowing out in Colorado, as Larry says, just enhances the opportunity for the Braves team that was already drawing an 8+ implied total, highest implied total I remember seeing all season long. I think it was like 8.4. Just an absurd opportunity in Colorado. It's kind of both-sided in Colorado a little bit today. Rookie making his debut performance for the Braves on the other side of that one, so they're pushing a 5.45 run implied total to the Rockies side of things, but the Braves are at an 8.23, which is just bonkers, completely insane. Obviously, it's a hit or miss spot. There is definitely the potential where you get an underperformance by that team. They only score 4 or 5 runs. It's not overly DFS relevant, and you've wasted a lot of money alongside a lot of the field. We kind of saw some of that, on the way last night. We saw the ridiculous pitching performance, by the way, from Charlie Morton. That we talked about how Charlie was looking like he was right on the line, but didn't seem totally necessary. A lot of good, interesting pitching performances last night on that slate. But we'll see what happens with this spot for Coors. I think I'm going back there. There's a ton of value available on this slate. We'll talk about some of the different options. It looks like one that was a big topic of discussion early in the day has kind of cooled, at least in the site that I refer to as ownership projections for today. Early in the day, Denny Reyes from the Mets was drawing massive ownership projections. I'm not sure what the Stochastics or anybody else of the world has done with it, but it looks like he course corrected a little bit, given that he's not overly talented. No, actually now he's back up a little bit. This thing's bouncing all over the place, man. This is a wild one. So that's going to be interesting. We've got a lot of really limited pitchers. Danny Reyes, Andre Jackson, Angel Zerpa, Kyle Freeland, and Darius Vines are at Coors Field, so arguably it's a 10-pitcher slate, not a 12-pitcher slate. And I think that's the case. We've got Joey Wentz acting as a bulk reliever against that flawed Yankees lineup, but they're so good against lefties. It's really ugly. There's like 4 good options, 3.5 good options. It's dicey. I think we do benefit by embracing some risk, but it looks like there's a lot of ownership on some of those really ugly plays. So I think we've got to dance around those and maybe embrace some of the even uglier looking ones, like the Brandon Fats against the Dodgers of the world. It's a weird slate. I wouldn't blame anybody who just wanted to say, "Hey, I'm going to cut my pitching pool at Garrett Cole, Zach Eflin, Jesus Luzardo, and Dane Dunning and try and win it with bats." I don't think that's necessarily a poor strategy on this slate. That's how short the options are. But I do think there's upside in going to some of those values. I just kind of disagree with where the field is landing overall on them. So we'll get into some of that as we talk. Let me get this correctly over here. Bear with me one sec. I think we got all the lineup. Oh, no. Looks like the Rays. Oh, no. I had the Yanks. I think I had the Rays in. Yep. Should be good. Shannon Lambert says, haven't seen news today. Did the Angels just randomly cut Mike Trout today? Yeah, some cost-saving moves. It's interesting the way I was talking to my friends earlier in the day on our text thread, and really, it's like a shitty fantasy league where somebody just before the playoffs is like, who's not in it, is just like, I dropped all my players, and everybody gets their, by waiver priority, gets their pick of the best possible plays. Several of those players can be very, very useful for a playoff team. There are good bats. Hunter Renfroe is one of the better right-handed power hitters over the last few years. Giolito's obviously, up and down this season, but has a very high end and has a very strong pedigree as a right-handed pitcher. What's his face? The relief pitcher. Matt Moore? Is it Matt Moore? Whoever it was, whatever his name is, one of the leading, their best relief pitcher of the season. So, I mean, there's a lot of good players that got dropped onto waivers yesterday. And then, like, Harrison Bader from the Yanks got dropped onto waivers. A lot of interesting names. Josh Donaldson, a lot less. Fortunately, getting rid of him. Interesting for the Yanks. They're talking about potentially calling up Jason Dominguez and Austin Wells to pad out get those kids some cups of coffee. That'll be fun if they do that. Today's show is brought to you by Ludicrously Tall Cups. Ludicrously Tall Cups. When you want to have no idea how much you're drinking or what angle to tilt your cup at, ask for Ludicrously Tall. This thing is literally bigger than my head. It's like the size of my forearm. Ridiculous. It was the only clean cup in the cabinet. Got to do some dishes. Shannon says, what a horrible organization. I assume you're talking about the Angels, not my Yankees? Larry, waivers means that the Yanks technically, he's still playing, he's still on the team, and it's irrevocable waivers means that if another team over the next couple of days, there's a waiver period in which he's available for another team to claim or multiple other teams to claim, and then they would just get him. The Yankees would be free of his any remaining contract obligations, which is why the Angels are just trying to cost cut since they're not going to make the playoffs. Yeah, he's kind of doing the same thing. Bader's a free agent after the season. He wanted to come back, apparently. Not having a great year, just here for defense. Oh, yeah. He asked the reporters what's waivers. Yeah, I saw that. Found out by watching ESPN that they had waived him. Yeah, that was in the post. Forgot. I didn't catch what you were putting down there, Larry. Just botching the Ohtani trade then. Yep. Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to judge the Angels too much because I did like those acquisitions that they made at the deadline. Like, there's no, you can't say that the attempt wasn't valiant. It was just kind of misguided because they traded away some of their organizational depth and they had a limited opportunity to make the playoffs even at that point. They should have done it earlier. They should have geared up better for the season. They also did get dinged by a lot of injuries this year. So there is that aspect to it, but yeah, it's a poorly run organization, no doubt about it. Trey is late somehow. 4 o'clock start, Trey, but you didn't miss much. We haven't gotten into the slate too much yet. Just kind of talking obliquely about the nature of the slate rather than actually looking at things. But that's a good cue to show you a black screen. Welcome to the black screen show, Trey. We need to share this. There we go. Gain a little bit more screen here. There we go. So, I mean, we can start. Where should we start? Should we start here with this ridiculous number? A couple of teams above 5, with the Braves above an 8. 8.22 highest. That's the highest I remember all season. If I'm wrong, forgive me, but I can't imagine there was a higher one all season. We've seen some 7s, we've seen some mid 7s, so on and so forth. But 8.2, yowza. 5.4 for Colorado on the other side of that game. This game I really like. As I mentioned, I do think there's a little bit of potential as a sneaky value option for Brandon Pfaadt. There's basically no pitchers off the board today, and he's been quite a bit better in August in his 5 starts than he was in those starts in May that were so bad that ruined his numbers. But the Dodgers 5.45 when everybody's going to be here. I think there's potential there. I think there's potential lurking for the Rangers going up against the popular Mets lousy starter. There's potential for the Yanks. They're very good against left-handed pitching. They get a lefty bulk reliever. So it's an interesting run board. There's potential in a lot of spots for offense. And then this game just sitting at a 7.5 total. Both teams below 4. This is the only game with good pitching on both sides. Every other game has at least limited pitching on one side or the other, if not both. So it's going to be a fun one. Pitching board. No surprises. Garrett Cole at the top of the board with a bullet. Zach Eflin over Jesus Luzardo might be a little surprising to some. That's how I'm seeing it. I think it's a better matchup for Eflin than it is for Luzardo, and he's been pitching very, very well this season. I wholeheartedly believe in that projection. I like him a lot at price, especially differentiated from where Garrett Cole is on both sides, particularly 9.7 compared to 11.5 for Cole, and same story for Luzardo on the other side. 9.2 compared to 11.5 for Cole is a spectacular option for a very, very high-end pitcher. So both sides of the game in Florida are definitely interesting on the mound and critical on the mound at the top end, to be honest. If you're not going to Garrett Cole, it's one of these guys, or you're just going to some cost savings. I think it's viable to go like Dunning Luzardo, Dunning Eflin, starts like that. I think it's also viable to go like, high price if you can. It probably precludes you from rostering too many Braves. So it's an interesting slate with the way that stuff comes together. Then there's Dane Dunning, who I do think is very, very playable in this spot. I don't think it's necessarily one of those spots where Dane Dunning goes out, strikes out 10, 12, like he's done 3 times this season in those major, major bright spots. But this is just an average-ish Dane Dunning kind of a projection against a top-heavy, fairly limited Mets team. So I actually really like the spot, even if he doesn't go out there and strike out a ton. It's just kind of looking to book 5 or 6 clean innings, a couple of strikeouts, not really get dinged on the downside. Hopefully you get 6 or 7 innings out of him, and the price is right. 7,700, 7,600 puts him on the value tier when he projects as one of the top options on a very, very limited slate. Then you get into Ryan Pepiot. Ryan Pepiot is a really high-end pitching prospect. He's 26. He has pretty good results through the minor leagues. Mixed results so far at the major league level, but he's a very high-end kid. The issue with Pepiot is, first off, a matchup against the Diamondbacks, who are fairly good, fairly low strikeout, pretty hard hitting, and an intriguing stack of their own. But he's also probably going to be limited to around 85 to 90 pitches. I don't think we're seeing him much more than that. So that gets a little bit dicey. He was injured for most of the season. He's pitched a really limited sample. I can't imagine they're rolling him out there to chase a complete game shutout. Not that he's going to do that, but he does have a really strong arsenal of pitches. He's got a plus changeup that is regarded as, when he was in the minors, like the best changeup in the minor leagues. So he's a very high-end kid. It'll be interesting to see what he can do with 85 pitches against this team. On the right night, I do think there's a path to success for that price, especially if these guys above him go pop. Like if these guys go bust, or even just have somewhat ineffective starts at those prices compared to these guys, that's a wide margin for getting these guys through, even in limited samples. So questionable. Joey Wentz, very bad at the major league level, does have interesting strikeout numbers in the minors. Going up against the Yankees, who crush left-handed pitching even in this bad season. They are a very good team against lefties. We'll talk about it in a second. They're facing a right-handed opener, probably just for an inning, might take the top off the Yanks lineup for Joey Wentz the first time through. He gets into the easier back end of the lineup, and he can start out strongly. We'll see what happens there. It's a really limited option. A 20-point projection, puts him in the top half on this ridiculous slate, but it's not good. You're just looking for some value. You're throwing a value dart. And that's the case for most of these guys, or all of these guys, really. It's the case for most of the slate. You're talking about a slate on which Ronald Acuna Jr. at 7,000 is priced higher than 7 of the 12 DraftKings pitchers. That's how bad this slate is. Only these guys cost more than Ronald Acuna today. Ronald Acuna is a hitter, not a pitcher. Dicey pitching options. Danny Reyes, as I mentioned, 5,500, 4,000. The price is right. He's the correct guy to go to if you're only looking at price. He projects out okay. The Rangers have been bad over the last couple of games. That doesn't mean they are bad. They've got spectacular options in that lineup. They're an excellent offense. Earlier in the day, like 28, 29% of DraftKings and like 17% of FanDuel ownership was going in this kid's direction. As I said before, I think that cooled a little bit, at least in the projections that I use, but it might not have around the industry. It sounded like he was going to be highly projected around the industry as well. If he's super high owned, I think that's an easy step away. I think that's one that's, even at price, very easy to leave on the table. We'll get into it. Angel Zerpa against the Pirates, limited pitcher. I think there's offense. I think there's a little bit of value darts on both of these lousy pitchers. Both of these guys are bad. Angel Zerpa, Andre Jackson, both bad. But the Pirates and the Royals are also bad. Four corners, all of it ugly. Brandon Pfaadt, like I said, much better in 5 starts so far in August. Getting a lot of innings in August. It was terrible in May. Was lousy in a very limited sample since May. And is a very highly regarded pitcher who comes in at 6,700, 6,500. Doesn't project well. He's facing the Dodgers. That makes sense. But I think there's a little bit of ceiling here that's not necessarily represented by projection and is probably going to go under-owned for price, even against the Dodgers. And then these two guys they're really bad. Well, this guy's really bad, and he's pitching at Coors Field against the best team in baseball by far, and they have an A+ total. And this guy is making his major league debut at Coors Field. Does have a little bit of pedigree. Seems like a decent pitcher, but Coors Field. So let's get into it. That was your quick version of the entire slate breakdown. To get more specific about it, let me pull up the notes. Went deep in the article today. Spent a lot of time going through the article. So if you check out the article, it's up on rotoscouts. It's free. The home run picks are free. The power index is free. The top stacks board is free. We'll refer to the top stacks a little bit through the show. But detailed notes on everything we're going to talk about through by just checking out the site. I've got it broken down into 4 parts for each game. So to start us off, Joey Wentz, like I said, pretty lousy. 84 and a third, 17 starts this year. 6.62 ERA and a 5.08 xFIP. 19.7% strikeouts and 9% walks. Going up against the Yankees as a lefty, heavily right-handed Yankees lineup. The active roster for the Yanks has a 118 WRC plus against lefties. That ranks 7th overall in baseball, and they have a 223 collective ISO, which is second only to Atlanta at 241. That said, this is not necessarily fully representative of what's in this lineup today. I do think there are interesting parts, given the young kids down the bottom of the lineup. Roy more defensively oriented catcher. Harrison Bader, most of these guys are representative of that sample, actually. So it's really just these 3 guys that are kind of outliers in small samples. None of them have done well. All of them probably just dragged those numbers down, technically. So all the quality, all that crazy ISO and everything is obviously in Aaron Judge, Giancarlo Stanton, and then some of these guys in the 180s. It's a decent opportunity to roster the Yankees. They've got some obvious power upside from those bats on the right side. If you're looking at Wentz, like I referred to before, the Yanks, for one, against lefties do strike out at a 23.7% rate. We know that they're a vulnerable team. If you don't get those premium power bats delivering that premium power, they're kind of lousy for run creation. They're kind of lousy for sequencing. Wentz is super gettable for all of those things, and he's very gettable for power. 4.62% home runs, 10.8% barrels, 42.8% hard hits. In 7 starts, 32 and 2/3 last year, Wentz had a 3.03 ERA and a 4.56 xFIP, 20% strikeouts. The interesting part comes in AAA. In AAA, 6 starts this year, mediocre numbers for runs, 4.40 ERA and a 4.42 xFIP, but a 28.9% strikeout rate. Again, it's an advanced minor league level. It's not great that that's what we have to cling to here, but it's something. 27% strikeout rate over 48 and a third in AAA last year in 11 starts, and throughout like the lower levels of the minors in years past, he was in the upper 20s. So he's got a little bit of talent. The Yanks are a little bit vulnerable, not necessarily to lefties because of all their power, but if the power doesn't show up today, there is a path to success as a value dart, if nothing else, for 6,700, 7,200 for Joey Wentz. It's not getting him as a full starter kind of sucks on the FanDuel slate now. You take away the shot at the quality start. Coming in as a bulk reliever, he does still have the shot at the win, but a quality start comes off the board on FanDuel. So it diminishes his quality on the FanDuel slate. The fact that he probably won't have to face these guys at least, DJ LeMahieu, Aaron Judge, Gleyber Torres off the top of the lineup, does work in Joey Wentz's favor as a value dart. I just think it's a much stronger play where the quality start doesn't matter now. On the Yankees side, if you're going to Yankee stacks, which I think we absolutely should, I think basically all of the offenses are in play today. It makes sense to grab even little shares of like the Tigers, some of the lower end teams. Obviously, the Rockies with a high run total at Coors Field make a lot of sense to go to as a limited team. So I do think that we're going to some Yanks here. I talked about the quality against lefties. DJ has kind of sucked all season. Getting him only at first base for 3,900 on DK kind of sucks. 2,600 triple position eligible third, first, and second is a lot more valuable on the FanDuel slate. He's got a 22.7% strikeout rate this year, up from 13.1 last year. Last year we thought was a lousy DJ season when it was happening, but he went 261, 357, 377, still created runs 16% better than average, rarely struck out, walked a lot. This year the walks are down, the strikeouts are way up. The triple slash is 242, 321, 389. The run creation mark is 2% below average instead of 16% above. The only thing that matches last year is the 12 home runs. And if I'm trading off all those strikeouts and all that quality for the 44 points of additional hard hit rate, it's just not worth it. He's just been bad all year. There is a little bit of value in the positional flex, the cheap pricing, and the fact that he hits ahead of Aaron Judge and Gleyber Torres and Giancarlo Stanton. Judge, massive power option, 6,600, pushing Ronald Acuna for the top spot on price-wise on DK, only 400 short, 4,300 on FanDuel. Obviously a big price tag, but a major piece of value, and you can average those prices down really, really quickly with everyone else on this team. The fact that you can get Gleyber Torres for 3,000 at second base, Giancarlo Stanton for 2,900, 44 and 4,800 for those two players on DK. Then you get into the Volpes, the Baders, and everybody else in the world at even cheaper prices. The Judge price really doesn't matter all that much. It counts, but you can bring it down really quickly by including those players. 174 WRC plus for Judge at 358 ISO, 29 home runs and only 337 plate appearances, 17.34 to lead the entire slate? I don't remember. Yep, looks like it leads the entire slate, Coors included today. So obviously, Judge against Wentz, that's a major, major home run opportunity. Then you get into the some Braves, some Dodgers, and then you get to Giancarlo Stanton, who's only a couple spots down the lineup from Judge. But Gleyber Torres, having a really good year at second base. He's cut his strikeouts. He's kind of done the opposite of what DJ's done. Right? Gleyber's cut his strikeouts from 22.6 to 14.2. They've like traded bodies this season. He's pushed his walks from 6.8 to 9.2. Like those are almost the same changes in reverse directions, which is kind of wild. Gleyber's got 22 home runs on the season, a 184 ISO. He's created runs 20% better than average, slashing 271, 339, 455. Okay contact profile. A lot of home runs. Some of them Yankee Stadium home runs, but those count too. 12 steals on the season. Good source of value for only 4,400, 3,000 at second base. And kind of a key position. One of the better second basemen on this slate, but that also does have, it's a slate that has Marcus Semien, Mookie Betts with second base eligibility. There's options at second base, but Gleyber's a good one. Stanton, for all his flaws, still does have 19 home runs at 230 ISO, still does have 15.9% barrels, a 48.1% hard hit rate, strikes out 27% of the time, but does draw his walks at 9.4. That jibes fairly well with Joey Wentz's high walk rate. So Stanton, despite his terrible average, his low on base percentage, does have a little bit of value when he only costs 4,800, especially when he only costs 2,900. Volpe at shortstop, 3,600, 2,600. The counting stats are there. 19 home runs, the 20 stolen bases. He should have twice that many stolen bases. He needs to be getting on at like a 320, 340 clip. And he would be significantly better. The run creation would be above average. But at least the power's there. He can steal a base if he manages to get himself to first. Hits the ball very hard. His 9.5% barrels, 42.3% hard hits, 27.4% strikeouts is high, but 9.1% walks. Plays decent defense, plays basically every day at shortstop. So, I'm happy that the youth movement is going on. I'm happy that he's the big star and he'll be our shortstop going forward. And I think he's going to turn into something. But I'm trying to bring myself around to the limited results in the triple slash and some of the things I care about. Harrison Bader, really limited season. He's sitting on waivers, 7 home runs, 16 steals. Anybody can have him if they want him. Everson Better yet a part of the future, potentially. We'll see. 31 plate appearances so far in the show since the big call-up. Was raking in the minors, one of their top prospects. 107, 194, 143 with a -3 WRC plus in his first 31 chances. What I want to focus on, though, is the 13.3% barrels, the 66.7% hard hits in the limited batted ball events. There is power here. There is a decent hitter here, I think. We'll find out. Oswald Peraza, another high-end prospect for this team. Double third base shortstop eligibility for 29 on DK, kind of interesting. The 3-position eligibility for only 2,100 on FanDuel is pretty interesting to me. Peraza's a highly regarded player. Not done anything at this level yet. Stole 4 bases earlier in the season, 89 plate appearances at this level. But he's a good young player, so I kind of like that option, especially with triple position eligibility for as cheap as it is on the FanDuel slate. AAA this season, Peraza in 300 plate appearances has 14 homers, 16 steals, a 211 ISO, and a 106 WRC plus. Okay triple slash, 268, 357, 479. But a good bet, and a kid who they expect to develop into a true player. So it'll be interesting to see where he fits in long term, given that I hope they keep Glaber. Glaber's always been on the in the trade rumors the last couple of years, but I think he's a foundational piece. He's only 26, and he's obviously taken major steps forward this year, so hopefully they see that the same way. Going to the Tigers side. Tigers are facing Garrett Cole. Cole projects easily at the top of the board, 11-5, 11-1. He's the best pitcher on the slate. Makes total sense. Strikeouts are down this year. Walks are up. 27% strikeout rate, down from 32.4. 6.3% walks is, it's right about the same, actually. I thought it was up a little bit more than that. 5.6% walks 2 years ago with 33.5% strikeouts. It's up from that, but walks are okay. 1.04 whip is very good. 2.95 ERA is obviously good. 3.66 xFIP, higher, but still very good. Only a 2.69% home run rate this year compared to the 4.16 last year. Has improved in terms of the premium contact that he's allowed, which, isn't nothing for a guy who did struggle from time to time with giving up the long ball with a couple people on base in the wrong situation. The swinging strikes are way down by about 3 percentage points. That's where the strikeouts have gone. But if he's trading that off for limiting power and pitching well overall, I don't mind it that much. I'd like to have the strikeouts. For DFS, I definitely would like to have the strikeouts, especially at these high prices. But the good news is there's plenty of strikeouts in this Tigers lineup. 25.2% strikeout rate for this confirmed version of the lineup. A lot of lefties in here, a couple interesting lefties that I do think are viable on this slate. They're very, very cheap. They don't project great. They rank 11th on the board for fantasy points, but they land 8th by home run potential. It's a 12-team slate, so that's, it's okay. It's not great. Sean Murphy not in the lineup. We expected that. But there are a couple good power bats here and a couple good lefty power bats. Riley Green is one of them. 11 home runs on the season, a 163 ISO, making very, very good contact that should deliver more power than this over time as he develops as a hitter. 11.7% barrels, 47.3% hard hits, 28% strikeouts, feeds Garrett Cole's upside, but 286, 347, 450, creating runs 19% better than average over his 404 plate appearances. Riley Green from the left side has been their best overall hitter this season. Kerry Carpenter's right there with him. He's also a lefty, 332 plate appearances, 286, 349, 532, and he delivers a lot more power. Similar contact profile, 11.5% barrels, 46% hard hits. He's got 20 home runs on that, a 246 ISO, a 139 WRC plus. Last year, 6 quick home runs and only 113 plate appearances gave us the idea that he could be a realistic lefty power bat coming into the season. Missed a chunk of the year. Would be interesting to see what he'd be at with 5 with an additional 200 plate appearances in the bag. Spencer Torkelson from the right side, not nearly as bad as his reputation. We've been talking about it a lot over the past couple of months. 23 home runs, a 202 ISO, up to a 103 WRC plus. Still limited in the triple slash. Weak on base, weak batting average, but a good slug, good home run output, and an excellent contact profile. 14.5% barrels, 51.1% hard hits. 24.3% strikeouts is non-tragic for the contact that he makes for the home run total. 10.3% walks is good. The on base should be a little bit higher. Tells me that he's getting a little bit unlucky with some of his BABIP when he's not hitting home runs. They're not really falling in for many base hits. He's probably hitting a lot of atom balls with all this premium contact, all that power. So Torkelson, I think, is a good option. If you're going to Tiger stacks, these three hitters are my priorities. And then I think you've got some interesting bolt-ons. Akil Baddoo, limited, but he leads off ahead of those guys, so that gives him a little bit of upside. 3,200, 2,700. He's correctly priced. 9 home runs and 8 stolen bases and only 291 plate appearances isn't bad. And we're playing Akil Baddoo more for the memory of the guy that 2 years ago in 461 plate appearances gave us 13 homers, 18 steals, and a 108 WRC plus. Again, not amazing star caliber output, but there's a little something there for counting stats. He was above average for run creation. If we get that guy for one night ahead of these guys, he also hits from the left side of the plate. Give me a couple base hits, a little bit of speed, score some runs for me. For those prices, that's a key part of that stack potentially. Zach McKinstry, another lefty, 4,000, 2,300. Easily playable multi-position eligibility on both sides. Triple position on FanDuel. 8 home runs, 15 steals in a limited season. 90 WRC plus in 429 plate appearances. He's okay. Put the ball in play, get on base, steal a bag. Same kind of thing as Akil Baddoo. Matt Vierling, 3,800, 2,400. Did most of this damage against right-handed pitching. 89 WRC plus in 415 plate appearances. Another guy, he's cheap, he's easy enough to get to at outfield on FanDuel. At third base, gives him a little bit more potential on DK, but that's kind of a flawed option to stick at third base in the grander sense of the entire slate. Parker Meadows is kind of interesting. 32 plate appearances, 1 home run, 1 stolen base, 3,100 in the small sample, 12.5% barrels, 43.8% hard hits. It's very cheap, late in the lineup. I do think there's a little bit of potential. He had 19 home runs and 19 stolen bases in 517 opportunities this season in AAA. Sneaky good late in the lineup when you go to Tigers bats. So he'd actually be probably my 4th priority. I think I like these 3 guys, and then jump down to Parker Meadows. And then take your pick between the other guys on DK. But those are my 4 priority bats here. I like getting 3 lefties with power against Garrett Cole. It's not great. Cole is most likely going to go out and shut this team down. But when we're hunting for contrarian options on a weirdly shaped, lousy kind of a slate, I think these guys are in play. These guys are more limited. That guy's more limited. And then the bottom of the lineup kind of bounces. 2,600, 2,200 for Andy Ibanez. Second base only on DK. That sucks. Third base outfield added to that on FanDuel. Gives him a little bit more value. 86 WRC plus, 9 homers. Jake Rogers, where you need catchers, probably interesting, but it's a relatively deep catcher slate. 15 home runs, 215 ISO is good enough. 88 WRC plus. We don't really worry about the WRC plus, the triple slash. We're just hunting for the power. He does have 11.8% barrels, 46.5% hard hits. Very inconsistent. Also has a 32.2% strikeout rate to, again, float the upside for Garrett Cole. Garrett Cole way up here. Yankees bats. Tigers bats. Joey Wentz. Joey Wentz really probably only viable on DK now that he's not making the full start. Second game up. Larry C. says, oh Lord, just ran on SaberSim without doing any adjustments. 85% Reyes, 60% of Love it. Dennis Forgy, Parker Meadows, 3.2K in the 7 hole against Cole. I like that spot, man. I'm telling you. I do like that Parker Meadows play. Darno in for the Braves. No Rosario. Pilar batting 8th. Yeah, so that was the expected one for the Braves, Larry. King of Smack, thoughts on Dunning is that I like Dunning. I think it's a really good spot. I think he's got potential to lead the slate if a guy like Garrett Cole and then the 2 pitchers in Florida go bust. He's my 4th highest projected pitcher. I think he's at a great value price. It's a good spot, not a great spot against the Mets. They're top heavy. There's 3 threatening hitters in that lineup and then a bunch of meh. There's plenty of strikeouts for him, although I don't think it's like a crazy strikeout game. Oh, and this is the game we're talking about now, so I can actually get a little bit more specific. I forgot that it was on the screen. I was looking at the chat, not the screen in front of me. So to get into it, 7,600, 7,700 is just the right price for Dane Dunning. You can see he projects out pretty well, very well by comparison to most of the entire slate. There's plenty of value in Dane Dunning. He's had some very, very good starts for DFS purposes this year. A lot of good, not great starts, and then a few great starts where he spiked major strikeout totals. I don't think we're looking for that big strikeout, 10 strikeout, 12 strikeout type performance, but a handful, 5, 6, 7 is definitely in play against this Mets team for him. And he's got just a good potential to pitch clean innings. He doesn't give up a ton of power, only a 2.48% home run rate on the season on 7.8% barrels. Effectively keeps the ball fairly down, not like an extreme ground ball option, but a ground ball oriented pitcher. 9.8 degree average launch angle, 89.3 miles an hour of exit velo, 40.7% hard hits. As long as this is below 10 or on a relatively low trajectory, as long as the barrels are below 10, I'm pretty good with it. And he's been very successful limiting home runs. 3.36 ERA, a 4.36 xFIP, obviously a full run higher, but that's still a pretty good xFIP. It's certainly not a tragic difference. 19% strikeouts. He was higher last year, 20.4, year before 22.3. He's got the ability, we've seen it this season, to spike big strikeout totals. So on a really limited pitching slate, I think he's a fantastic SP2 option, and I think he's a very good SP1 option on both sites where you're not going to the top pitchers. It's just so limited across the board that it just makes tons of sense. Poe Degen Stoner points out Kerry Carpenter in that Tigers lineup again. Yeah, I mean, Carpenter for me is probably the top priority. Well, no, it's probably Green then Carpenter, because I believe in Green in terms of just getting to first base a few times more than Carpenter, but Carpenter's the better of those two power hitters. But both of those guys are the top two priority bats, followed by Torkelson and then Parker Meadows. That's my 4-man Tigers stack, though. I think that's actually my placeholder. Did I use that? I know I was screwing around with it, building it earlier. Did I even put in my placeholders? I didn't. All right. Let me do that real quick. By the way, this slate starts at 6:40, which is 2 hours from now. The show will probably be over by then. Let me get these placeholder lineups in. I had one built, and then I didn't save it because it left me 100 short of getting a Pepio with what I wanted in that lineup, so that's why I didn't end up booking it. But those are my 4 Tigers priorities. I'm much more on the Garrett Cole side of that equation. Don't get me wrong. He makes a ton of sense to blow away the slate in terms of the pitching pool today. But on a really limited slate, I think the Tigers are easily playable, get a little bit contrarian. Cole is not what I would call vulnerable, but among the top aces in the league, he's somewhat gettable. Let's put it that way. Continuing on in this one, as much as I want to get to Dunning, I do think there's obviously playable bats on the Mets side of things. The prime threat, Pete Alonso in the heart of the lineup, even against Dunning's ability to check power, and 11.48 is a decent mark for Pete Alonso. It's difficult to get Pete below a 10 in the home run model. He's got a 296 ISO, 39 home runs on the season, only hitting 219, 323, 515. The 515 is obviously fantastic, but the front end of the triple slash isn't great, but still creating runs 29% better than average. Major source of power potential, 15.3% barrels, 42.2% hard hits. Just a dynamite bat in that lineup. You want to play this? What is this? Man, only 5K up top. I was pissed yesterday. I forgot to enter that $44 50K on FanDuel. Today's doesn't look nearly as good. 10 times lower of a prize pool for 55. So yeah, in addition to Alonso, we're going to, obviously, if we're stacking Mets, Francisco Lindor, their second best player, 10.8% barrels, 44.9% hard hits, 24 home runs, 23 steals, a 119 WRC plus, and a 212 ISO. Looks a lot like Francisco Lindor in the stat line overall. Not really worried about any decline in the batting average, the on-base percentage. He's been perfectly fine, and he's cheap. 4,800 is too cheap for Francisco Lindor. And by the way, 4,800 is way too cheap for Pete Alonso. 3,900 on FanDuel is correctly high priced. 37 is correct for Lindor. They're both inexpensive on the DK slate. Dunning is a good pitcher, but he's not that good that he should be limiting those guys to that. 4,400 for Nimmo is also really cheap. 3,700 for McNeil is like a bolt-on part, is a fine discount to include. On FanDuel, Nimmo's cheap at 29, McNeil's cheap at 28, but I don't care as much when Lindor and Alonso are basically correctly priced. Nimmo's an interesting leadoff hitter, 355 on base percentage, a 121 WRC plus, 19 homers, a very good contact profile. So I think there's upside for Nimmo on any given slate. He's got individual upside. He's a very good correlated scorer with the team's key bats. But everything falls apart really from like Dan Vogelbach down. Vogelbach's creating runs 4% better than average in his 292 plate appearances. I question whether that would remain above average if he had a full 500 at this point. 12 home runs, that would probably be in the 20s if he had a full 500, though. He's a lefty source of power, 48.3% hard hits, 9% barrels. For 2,800, 2,300, you have to decide between him and Alonso at first base on DK, so you're not getting that much Dan Vogelbach, but neither is the field. So it's a potential pivot point with a little bit of power, but it's a major sacrifice for that $2,000 difference. On FanDuel, you can stick Vogelbach into the util spot along with Alonso. It's kind of a limited option. There is a little bit of power potential against Dunning, but not much. He's pretty good at limiting power, and that's really the only thing Vogelbach's here to give us. DJ Stewart, kind of similar story. Obviously, the 7 home runs, the 317 ISO in 96 plate appearances is fantastic. The contact profile, 15.8% barrels, 49.1% hard hits is terrific, but he's a limited player overall, 29.2% strikeouts. And again, a guy who, going up against a guy who checks power. All these guys, below 5, not even halfway to the magic number. McNeil hilariously low. Lindor only at 7.79. Nimmo only at 6.14. It's really only Pete showing a lot of power. Dunning's effect is limiting these guys more than it's limiting Pete. He just shines through and has just so much power that it overcomes it. Omar Narvaez, so you don't even get the Alvarez lineup. He's playing a little bit less. I think they're trying to not overwork the kid after he's kind of fallen apart in the second half of the season here. Narvaez, interesting enough. Veteran bat with a little bit of pop, but done nothing in 100 plate appearances. Fell into the backup role after he got hurt, and Alvarez shined in as his replacement. 2,100 for that hitter, though, especially where catchers are necessary. That's not awful. He could get involved. Vientos has been bad in 137 plate appearances in the show, 195, 234, 305, only 3 home runs, a 47 WRC plus. Does have a lot of power in that bat. Does have a 52.9% hard hit rate, 10.3% barrels in the limited batted ball events. So not nothing, but again, limited for power against Dunning. Rafael Ortega had a good year 2 years ago, very limited hitter. Texas bats going up against Danny Reyes. So this is your value guy that everybody was so excited about earlier in the day that I can't imagine getting to him nearly what the exposures that I saw earlier today were. If he's crazy popular, like I said at the top of the show, just leave him to the field. Go in other directions. We're talking about a pitcher who's made 2 starts at this level. One of them was an opener appearance. Let me get to the notes. I want to get this exactly right. As I said in the article, Mets starter Denny Reyes will be taking the mound. The Rangers have a 5.30 run implied total. They're a minus 152 favorite, heavy favorites in Vegas. Reyes has 1 traditional start and 4 total appearances. He went 4 2/3 on August 12th. He struck out 4 of 26 Braves while walking 4, allowing 5 runs on 8 hits. That's against the Braves. You can forgive the runs and, it's a low-end performance. I think that's the ceiling that we're looking at against a not equal, but at least, comparable Rangers lineup on the right night. The Rangers have a ton of talent. There's a ton of power in this lineup. Looking at a bigger, more fair sample than just 1 clunky start. 76 innings in 15 starts, 17 appearances at AAA this season as a 26-year-old against younger talent, a 5.80 ERA and a 5.97 xFIP with a 17.8% strikeout rate and 8.5% walks. The only thing this kid is providing is access to combinations. For 4,000, that's why he's going to get any kind of popularity on DK. I get it, but I don't think he succeeds. I really think that the Rangers offense is going to get him. I know they've been cut down by bad pitching the last couple of days, but there's a limit to which we're going to think that has any impact on their, projectability. It's not predictive at all about what's going to happen today. These guys are outrageously good. These guys are all pretty good. It's a 9-man playable lineup on the other side that's projected well over 5 runs on a really limited slate. I don't think Denny Reyes is a good idea today, even at those prices. If he gives you a 0 or a negative score or even a low single-digit score on either site, even for that money, it's just not valuable enough. even if you drill bats, you're probably going to fall short of people who landed on basically the same bats with alternative guys in one spot. Like you make one different decision, and now you're paying for one of the other crappy starters in the 5,000s on DK, the 6,000s on DK. So it's overblown in this situation with this pitcher what this 4,000 can buy you. If he was a higher end guy, if he had any kind of track record, any kind of pedigree, I'd be maybe trying to sell it a little bit. I just don't think it's a good play. I was stunned to hear how highly owned he was supposed to be today. If he falls to like no ownership or limited ownership or light ownership, then fine. Take your $4,000 darts and run with it. And I do think you can mix some in, but I don't think you want to be near the field on that play. Assuming that the field's at high ownership into like the 20s even on DK, I think I would want to be below that. I just don't see it. And there's a lot of really similar options. Like, I'd just rather go to the two similarly crappy pitchers for a little bit more in that Kansas City and Pittsburgh game. Neither one of them looks at all good. They're both facing worse teams than the Rangers, though. Really limited option. Texas, I want to absolutely fire away with Texas here. They were looking relatively low owned with a lot of people going to the Danny Reyes play. So I just want to occupy a major position on the other side of that. If he's going to be at all popular, I will take my shots. I will figure out how to pay for Marcus Semien, Corey Seager, Nathaniel Lowe, Adolis Garcia, Mitch Garver, Jonah Heim, Travis Jankowski, Ezekiel Duran, and Leody Taveras. Like I said, it's a 9-man lineup. 1 through 9 on this team. The bottom end of the lineup is relatively affordable. Top 2 players are stars. On DK, they're higher end, more difficult to get to on the top end. Obviously, it's very difficult to put this team together with the Atlanta Braves, with the Los Angeles Dodgers, but I think there's a lot of ways you can go with this slate. I think there's a lot of available combinations, and if these guys are going to go under-owned by comparison to those teams, I am excited about the opportunity. Corey Seager is one of the best players in baseball. 342, 406, 641, a 300 ISO, and 406 plate appearances. 24 home runs. Give him another 200 plate appearances, he'd be 32 home runs, let's say. Similar probably in terms of the run creation, the ISO. I mean, he is this good. 17.7% barrels, 55.8% hard hits this year. 6,700 is a big ticket item at shortstop on DK, no question, but he's worth it. 4,000 on FanDuel shortstop, definitely worth it. His double play partner, 6,100, 3,600. 36 is too cheap for Marcus Semien at second base on FanDuel. 20 homers, 13 steals, a 119 WRC plus. 182 ISO, getting on base at a 347 clip, only strikes out 14.3% of the time. All three of these guys put the ball in play pretty effectively with a lot of power behind it. I think there is a lot of danger for a low strikeout pitcher like Danny Reyes just from these three hitters. And then you get into the power core. You get into the Adolis Garcia with his 32 home runs, his 248 ISO. Mitch Garver with 13 home runs and only 230 plate appearances and a 244 ISO. 15.5% barrels for Garcia, 15.4 for Mitch. 49.9% hard hits for Garcia, 48.3 for Mitch. Garver is a phenomenal power hitter at catcher. 3,800, 3,000. He's too cheap where the position's required. So is his counterpart, Jonah Heim. Also fills catcher, 3,600, 2,900 across sites. Basically the same price, does basically the same thing at the plate. Needed more plate appearances to get his 15 home runs than Garver did to get his 13. Garver's a better power hitter, but Jonah Heim hits from both sides. He's got plenty of power in that bat. I like the option. If you're not going to Garver, probably get Heim at a little bit lower ownership for a little bit less money. Travis Jankowski, decent hit tool, good stolen base upside. 102 WRC plus. He's a mix and match kind of a play, but he's priced like it. 2,900, 2,500 in the outfield. Easy to get. Ezekiel Duran, phenomenal flexibility. Shortstop, outfield, third base on FanDuel. That has so much value to it. 2,700. He's underpriced in addition to having triple position value. 285, 336, 465. On a slate with only so many options, period, in the entire thing, with only 12 teams in play, he's just too cheap given that he fills three positions with this much quality. His career runs 17% better than average this year. He's going up against a nothing pitcher. He's got a 9.5% barrel rate, 44.7% hard hits. Leody Taveras has backslid a little bit. He's down to a 93 WRC plus. Still can provide a little bit of counting stats for very cheap pricing at the bottom of the lineup in the outfield. 1 through 9 on the Texas side. 3 priority bats on the Mets side. Dane Dunning. Rangers bats, Dane Dunning. Mets bats. Do what you will with Danny Reyes. I am not a believer even at price. Projects out, I mean, he does, again, like, to put it in perspective, that 20 that he's pulling is higher than Angel Zerpa, is higher than Andre Jackson, is higher than Brandon Pfaadt, Darius Vines, and Kyle Freeland, obviously. So he does project a little bit better than these guys. but these guys are facing lower end matchups without the weight of the world on them in terms of public ownership. If that's not the case, wherever you draw your ownership projections from, just kind of adapt that take to whichever one of these guys is the highest owned, and I think you'll be in the right position. What I'm saying is get away from the field on those crappy pitchers. They're all basically the same. If you can, take the ones in the good matchups. This is not one in a good matchup. This is the guy in the worst of those matchups. Tampa Bay Rays, Miami Marlins. This is the game with two good pitchers. This is the game with limited hitting options. I do think both teams are in play because it's a 6-game slate. I think all the teams are in play. You want to have a little bit of everybody in as much as you can get to. But if you're building one lineup, if you're building 3 lineups, I don't think this is necessarily where you want to make your scene on either side in terms of the hitters. The pitchers, both of them would be in play in that situation for me. I would probably want to include, let's say I'm building 3 lineups on the 2-pitcher site. I probably want... That's tough. Because I haven't priced out whether you can get to Cole and Luzardo and anything reasonable. But since Dunning's there... You could say that I want like these guys together twice if you can afford that, and then like a Cole Dunning pairing, and then like a Cole crappy guy pairing, something like that in three lineups. I think the pitchers are both in play in 3 lineups just because of where they're going to be owned relative to the other top guys, most specifically Garrett Cole. Either one of these guys has a pretty high ceiling on this slate. They project out very, very well. Zach Eflin, 9,700, 10,000, 25.7% strikeouts. Nice step forward this year. A 3.55 ERA, a 3.20 xFIP, 30.3% CSW, and he doesn't walk anybody. 3.5% walk rate, sparkling walk rate. Doesn't allow much power, only 34.9% hard hits, 87.1 miles an hour of exit velo, 2.79% home run rate, and he's going up against a version of the Marlins that is without Jorge Soler, their primary power threat. There's a little bit of power for sure in this Marlins lineup. I don't think Eflin is by any means invulnerable on the mound, so I do think you go to a little bit of Marlins. Jake Berger showing the biggest home run mark at 11.1. He's got 27 home runs. Most of them came with Chicago before the trade. 273 ISO, 17.4% barrels, 48.3% hard hits, but strikes out nearly 30% of the time, and probably isn't this fearsome of a power hitter in the real sense. So, kind of a limited option there for power. There's power in Josh Bell. There's power in Jazz Chisholm. To a lesser extent, Brian De La Cruz. Certainly in Jesus Sanchez. This guy and this guy I would love to see for full season sometime. 271 plate appearances for Jazz. 13 home runs, 17 steals, a 99 WRC+, a 196 ISO. Pretty good season. Hits the ball very hard. Good player. 5,000, 3,000. Just can't stay healthy. Can't stay in the lineup. Jesus Sanchez got derailed by an injury early in the season. He's got 10 home runs. Most of them came before the injury. 306 total plate appearances. A 195 ISO, a 111 WRC+, and also makes very, very good contact with a 10.8% barrel, 47.3% hard hits from the left side. I really want to see both of these guys fill out a full season next year, or like a fun run through September for this team at least. Luis Arias, still a very good leadoff option, down to 350, 392, 447, in danger of not winning the batting title at this point, but obviously still a tremendous season. Excellent hit tool, very focused on just getting himself to first base. The on-base slipped below 400, but it's still outstanding. Ahead of Josh Bell, who has pulled his season together. He's up to 19 home runs, a 180 ISO, 107 WRC+. He benefited a lot from the trade out of Cleveland. De La Cruz, 3,500, 2,700. Reasonable season, 16 home runs, a 160 ISO, 95 WRC+. He's been all right. He was looking better, looking more like a breakout candidate earlier in the season. The contact profile's fine. For the price, he's perfectly fine, and it's a good spot in that lineup to go to. Bottom of the lineup is really weak, though. Julie Gurriel, a shadow of the hitter he once was, 253, 311, 362, and 81 WRC+. He's the best of those 3 options. Joey Wendell, 57 WRC+ over 268 plate appearances, and Nick Fortes, 53 over 269 plate appearances. 6-man lineup for the Marlins. I do think they're stackable 1 through 6. I wouldn't entirely leave Julie Gurriel out, but I don't want him all that many times at first base instead of Josh Bell. And I think there are better uses of a util spot on the FanDuel slate than pairing up those first basemen. So it's very, very limited option. Supports the upside for Eflin, considering that there's a lot of strikeouts through these guys. And then these guys are so weak. Damn it. And then the bottom 3 guys are so weak. A lot of upside for Zach Eflin here. Similarly, on the other side, Jesus Luzardo, 9,200, 9,600. Among the premium starters, among the really high-end guys with good strikeout rates and good seasonal numbers, Luzardo's easily at the best price. That includes Dunning, because even in the sevens, Luzardo just has a much higher ceiling than Dunning in most matchups, and particularly tonight. He projects out, what's that, 8-something points ahead of where Dunning was, 7 points ahead of where Dunning was, and obviously a much stronger path to an upside score. He's going up against a Rays lineup that is still pretty dangerous, does have several hitters that limit strikeouts fairly well, but also has several hitters at a very high strikeout rate, so that balances out to 24.2%. Several of their good hitters, Isaac Paredes, Harold Ramirez, and most specifically Yandy Diaz, are excellent at limiting strikeouts, but a few of their power sources have pretty big swing and miss upside. Luzardo is very talented at finding strikeouts, 14.1% swinging strikes, 27.9% strikeout rate on the year. He's been excellent. 3.77 ERA, a 3.71 xFIP, giving up a little bit too much in terms of the premium contact. The home runs are non-tragic. 3.51 is high, but it's, 4 is like my limit for what's bad versus high. So he's high, but he's not bad. 10.7% barrels, definitely too high. 41.9% hard hits, and 90 miles an hour of exit velo, right on the magic number for exit velo that I don't like. Fly ball oriented with a 14.3 degree average launch, so when he makes mistakes, they do travel. I do think there's home run potential on the Rays side, and some of it's coming through in the model. 2 guys above the 10 spot, above the magic number, neither one of them being Randy Rosarena, which is a little surprising. Isaac Paredes and Jose Siri have definitely earned that right to be above that line, though. 27 home runs in 461 for Paredes, 24 home runs in 327 for Jose Siri. They've both been outstanding for power this year. Rosarena, a little bit down in terms of the power. 176 ISO is surprising. 21 home runs is great. 18 stolen bases. Excellent multi-category contributor. All the premium contact is still there. It's actually higher than last year. 12.8% barrels, 48.4% hard hits. And the home run output is fine. It's still there. But he was at a 183 ISO last year with that contact. And just given the contact, given the actual power that he's got, seems like he should just have a regularly higher ISO than he does. Just a weird confluence of circumstances statistically, more than it is like a danger point or anything like that for Randy Rosarena. Still a phenomenal player, well worth the $54.37 price tag. Yandy Diaz at the top spot, 53.9% hard hit rate. What more can you say about Yandy Diaz? He's been phenomenal all year. 15.9% strikeouts, an excellent walk rate, 327, 403, 506, creating runs 58% better than average, little bit of power. Very solid triple slash, and 8.14 in the home run model, chasing the magic number. I mean, dynamite option off the top. Harold Ramirez, very cheap, 3,200, 2,800 for a guy creating runs 18% better than average. 300, 343, 434. Solid line drive hitter, makes sturdy contact, not spectacular contact. Doesn't really elevate the ball, more of a line drive, bring the runners around kind of a hitter. But doesn't strike out, puts the ball in play with authority quite regularly. If he walked a little bit more, he'd be extremely valuable. But I like Harold Ramirez, given how cheap he is, given that spot hitting third in this lineup. Brandon Lau snuck into the lineup. Wasn't expecting him today against the lefty, against the high-quality lefty. 4,700, 3,000. Hefty strikeout guy, but premium power on the right night. The hope is that we get him. He sees a lot of strong side platoon days. Against lefties this season, one of his 17 home runs, 184, 295, 263 with a .079 ISO and a 66 WRC plus, as compared to 236, 329, 465 with a 229 ISO and a 122 WRC plus with 16 home runs against righties in 310 plate appearances. The plate appearances against lefties are limited to only 44 because he was out for a while with injuries, and he's, like I said, limited more to strong side platoon splits. But looking at his full career, 442 plate appearances against lefties, 26 home runs, actually more effective than I thought. 225 ISO. That's not bad. 102 WRC plus is a big dip. The triple slash takes a major dip. 253, 348, 497 against righties, 223, 285, 448 against lefties. But the power is a little bit more intact than I thought it would be. Basically a third of his career home runs in like a fifth of the plate appearances. No, that's like a third of the plate appearances. Excuse me. Yeah, interesting. Still an option for power, let's say. Not as bad as I thought lefty-lefty. Hasn't delivered this year lefty-lefty, but a major source of power. Only costs 4,700 to 3,000. And I would venture to guess that most people are thinking about skipping him because of that same perception lefty-lefty. So maybe you get some Brandon Lau. I certainly think you're going to include him if you're building a lot of race stacks. You wouldn't want to skip him, especially if the idea is they chase Luzardo early and then get into the pen. You definitely want to have some Brandon Lau in your life. 34-24 for the shortstop, Oslevis Basabe, 273, 333, 409. Creating runs 11% better than average with one home run on the board in 48 opportunities since filling in for the Felon. Not bad. Jose Siri, as I talked about, major power upside. Paredes, major power upside. Bethancourt, moderate power, 8 home runs, a 143 ISO, 289 plate appearances. Almost a 40% hard hit rate, 8.5% barrels. He's okay. Where you need catchers for 2,800, he's okay, especially if you're building out raised stacks. Vidal Brujan, limited option, 2,000, 2,100. Hasn't done anything in 68 plate appearances this year. Didn't really do anything in 162 last year. Limited option, but very, very cheap at the bottom of the lineup. So, Zach Eflin, Jesus Luzardo, neck and neck, really. Luzardo gains ground by being a little bit cheaper. Both are very, very good pitching options. Rays bats, Marlins bats. Rays showing a little bit more power potential against Luzardo than the Marlins are back against Eflin. Interesting game. Much more into the pitching than I am the hitting, but I'll have a little bit of the hitting on both sides, but particularly the Rays. See if we got the Pirates lineup in. It's 5 o'clock. Let me reload the page. Why do I feel like this should be here? Nope, not yet. This game, this is one of the 8 o'clock games. So we do have a 6:40 and then a 8:10. 3 games at 6:40. Then this one at 8:10. The Coors Field game at 8:40. And then 10:10 start out in Los Angeles. So an oddly split slate. First 3 games will be over hours before that third one starts. Or that 6th one starts. You know what I meant. Pirates. Andre Jackson taking the mound. Bear with me. Let me pull the notes back up. It's really warm in here right now. I made the mistake of heating up some pizza slices in the oven, and it just got way too hot earlier. And it is yet to cool in this room. My back is sweaty. Not that you needed to know that, but I need to stall for time while I look for where the hell I wrote about Andre. Oh, that's right. I put them both in the same paragraph because they're both so bad. Let's see. All right, we'll start with Angel Zerpa. Lefty, 17.3% strikeout rate over 2 starts, 17 and a third innings in the show, a 7.27 ERA, a 4.94 xFIP, a 4.94 home run rate, a 45.8% hard hit rate. Very, very small sample. Also ineffective in 11 innings last year and 5 innings the year before. Kind of unfair to talk about him in those terms. So if we look at AAA this season, 4.73 ERA, a 5.54 xFIP, 19.7% strikeouts in AAA. In AA, in 13 starts, 64 innings last year in 2022, this is Zerpa again, 24.8% strikeout rate. Little bit of encouragement. He's only 23. Still got time to grow. Maybe there's something there in terms of a little bit more potential for strikeouts against a really bad team in the Pirates, but very limited option. Wasn't really good in AAA, has not been good in the very, 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 very small sample in the majors. The Andre Jackson side of things. Jackson's made 2 starts, 36 and 2/3 total innings in the show, 23.1% strikeout rate, 5.1% walks, definitely better than his opponent, but a 4.91 ERA, 3.98 xFIP. The xFIP is fine. The 4.91 ERA is high, but we don't really care about the ERA. The 4.49% home run rate, 10.8% barrels, 45% hard hits, 91.2 miles an hour of exit velo. Seems a little bit targetable. Past 2 years were also similar in very small samples for him. And then when we look at his minor league numbers, 38 and a third innings in AAA across the Pirates and Dodgers systems. Did have a 28% strikeout rate in AAA this year, which isn't terrible, but he's 26. So a little bit advanced for the level. Last year, 21.4% strikeout rate in 75 and 2/3 across 19 starts in AAA. 5 ERA even, 5 even ERA, 5.0. 6.12 xFIP. That was as a 26-year-old, so I guess he's 27 now. So when you can't dominate AAA at 26, I don't know how well you're going to succeed even against a mostly like quad A kind of a lineup at the major league level. Pretty low end options, But on a slate where we're saying that Denny Reyes guy is an option and one that's going to be drawing some popularity, like I said before, why not just take similarly priced $5,100, $5,700, similarly bad, similarly projected $5,400, $5,800 Andre Jackson, Angel Zerpa. Take shots against bad teams. If you're going to crappy pitching, like, let's at least do it against these bad teams. In a lot of games and a lot of performances, bad hitting beats bad pitching. But in a lot of times also, we've seen bad pitching beat bad hitting. There's no definite side of this one. So I do think there's a little bit of viability to these plays given the very low price points. You only need 5 okay innings out of these guys at these prices. That's all these value pitchers are tapped to give you today. None of them have good strikeout potential. None of them have like really clear paths to the win. Obviously, you hope for the win. But yeah, we're just throwing darts at a few innings. The guy who gives up the least in terms of runs and hits and any of the negatives, that's going to be your value guy today. So you can't convince me that these guys against these teams are any worse off than Denny Reyes against the Texas Rangers. I just don't buy it. I do think both sides are in play in terms of the offenses. Kansas City side, you got Michael Garcia up top. 276, 322, 367. Good enough to put the ball in play with a little authority. 49.8% hard hits against this pitcher who's going to allow a little bit of contact. Perfectly fine as a leadoff guy if you're going to Royal stacks. Not somebody to go out of your way for, not somebody to use as a one-off. The third base only positioning on DK sucks. I like him better as a shortstop on FanDuel, but like I said yesterday, the fact that Bobby Witt is the key priority bat, the best player on that team by far, also fills only shortstop. Now you're back to putting him at either Garcia at either third base or getting him as a util guy, which diminishes his overall value. The price is right. He correlates directly with the team stars. He's definitely in play in your Royal stacks and one of the higher priority bats in that stack. It's just that the positioning kind of sucks. Bobby Witt, their star, 11.5% barrels, 44.4% hard hits, 26 homers, 38 steals, a 221 ISO, 115 WRC plus, all-world shortstop. If you're not going to Corey Seager, Bobby Witt is a dynamite option. You can one-off Bobby Witt in this situation. He is the priority in stacks of Royals. He'll be their most popular player, I'm sure. Maybe not if people are using the Royals as a value play, actually. Like if you're just, kind of not paying attention and you just say, okay, Royals value, check. Got me to Braves, got me to an okay pitcher, but then you don't notice that it's like Freddie Fermin, Samad Taylor, Kyle Isbell in your lineup as your 3-man from the Royals. That's probably going to happen to a lot of people just because of how cheap these guys are with decent projections around the industry. So you want to pay attention to which of these guys you're actually getting to is kind of my point. Maybe Witt does fall a little bit by the wayside. He'll project as the best guy, but at that high price tag in stacks where these guys are going to be tried to combine with the Braves, with the Dodgers, with the Rangers, and the similarly high priced teams, he possibly would fall off a little bit in terms of the ownership. So just one to keep an eye on for where he's projected around the industry. Sal Perez, down season for Sal, 166 ISO, only an 83 WRC plus, does have 19 home runs, still a 45% hard hit rate. He's priced way down for his talent, 4,100, 2,500. This is a guy who had 48 home runs 2 years ago, 21 last year, or 23 last year, I think. Still a very viable catcher option. Where you need catchers for that cheap, Sal Perez has a lot of upside in this matchup. MJ Melendez, 3,400, 2,700. He just kind of sucks. 154 ISO. I've been trying to pep talk him, bring him around all season. Talk to him about how this premium contact doesn't equal only 12 home runs and a 154 ISO, but there it is. Over 510 plate appearances. It has not normalized. It's just weird, but that's who he is right now. So a lot of strikeouts there, pushing 30% strikeouts. Limited option, but a key part of Royal stacks if you're going there. I actually prefer Nelson Velasquez. Well, prefer is a strong word because MJ at least gives you a lefty power bat. But Nelson Velasquez has a ton of right-handed power. In a small sample, 82 plate appearances, 8 home runs, a 351 ISO is just bonkers. 17.9% barrels, 46.4% hard hits. Obviously, he's not going to sustain a 351 ISO or hit 8 home runs every 82 plate appearances. He would be in the Hall of Fame if he does. But a decent power bat for a very, very cheap price, $2,900 in the outfield on both sides. Matt Beattie, Freddie Fermin, Samad Taylor, Kyle Isbell all kind of suck. 98, 53, 70 WRC plus. Freddie Fermin's actually the best of the group this year. Backup catcher, 282, 313, 482, a 200 ISO, 9 home runs and only 209 plate appearances, and a pretty good contact profile for 3,200, 2,400. I do think, especially since you can get Sal at first base, Freddie Fermin not off the board as a DK catcher option at 3,200. If you're building Royal stacks, that's an interesting way to put this team together. Just go like Witt, Sal, MJ, Velasquez and Freddie. You forgo Matt Beattie at first base. That's not really a big sacrifice. Kind of like the idea that they gave Sal that first base positioning over there. 2,500 on FanDuel. 3 catchers on the board on FanDuel where you don't need them. Going to the Pirates side, Ke'Bryan Hayes. Ke'Bryan Hayes, I think we are talking into being a little bit good. Keep talking about him. Keep bringing it up. Keeps on delivering. Hit his 11th home run late in the game last night. That sneaky Pirate stack that I wanted to get to against that Cole Ragans popularity did not work out until the 9th inning. Top of the 9th, they had a big rally. Got a few points on the board. Worked out to be a little bit better of a play. Still not Slate winning by any means, but a little bit more respectable, and Ke'Bryan Hayes was a part of that. 11 homers, 9 steals, up to a 99 WRC+, 173 ISO, 269, 310, 442. We're creeping along toward viability. Sub 20% strikeouts with all these hard hits, only 4,300, 3,100. I kind of like him at third base against a kind of a nothing lefty here. Some upside for Ke'Bryan Hayes. Brian Reynolds, interesting hitter for 4,900, 3,500. A little pricey on FanDuel for what he's done this season, but there's a strong track record for Brian Reynolds in the past that I'm willing to tolerate the higher price. 49 on DK relative pricing. That's very, very good. 11.2% barrels, 47.5% hard hits, 18 homers, 10 steals, a 108 WRC+. Still their best player overall. Andrew McCutchen walks a lot, gets on base, correlated scoring option for a fair price, 4,129. If you get individual upside out of him, so much the better. But I do think he's, at price, a playable key part of that stack, hitting in the middle of the lineup. Connor Joe against lefties, pretty good. 3,300, 2,400 gives him a little value, a little bit of value. Valuability, I think is what I almost said. Viable value. Little viability as a value. First base and outfield eligibility. Decent play, 9 home runs, a 181 ISO, 111 WRC+. That's an interesting spot in the lineup there. Chuck Deuces says, I knew Terry was going to victory lap that Pitt's 6 runs. I swear, but did you have all the Piguero? I did have some Piguero. That's definitely not victory lapping that. That's saying, whew, can't believe they actually pulled it off and made it look like it might have been an okay play to have made. It definitely was not a okay play to have made because they didn't get to Ragans. Having it in that first 7 innings before Ragans came out of the game was the critical factor in that. So yeah, definitely not victory lapping it. Just mentioning that they did end up delivering a little bit last night, Chuck, and most specifically in reference to my guy Ke'Bryan Hayes off the top. Larry says you can see the wheels turning on valuability. Steve Mackler says, Terry, I appreciate everything you do. Love the write-ups and you telling your dog to lay down almost every show. Yeah, he's been kind of quiet down there today, Steve. Let's not inspire him. But appreciate that, buddy. Everybody out there, hit the like button if you haven't already. Show us a little love. We get great likes to view count ratios. It's always pretty phenomenal. Makes me feel good, and love the shout outs and everything from everybody. And I love that everybody tunes in to hang out with me through these crazy rambling breakdowns that are probably way too long. 5:13 coming up. We've got a 6:40 start time to keep in mind. Andrew Joker's he's a mutt. He's a lot of different herding dogs all smashed together. We ran the DNA on him once and it just came back like there's just everything in there. I don't know if those things are just like people throwing darts with a bunch of different like note cards of like, Basset Hound, Sheepdog, Chihuahua, and whatever they hit like in their first 5 darts is what you get on the DNA breakdown. But according to that, he had everything up to and including like boxer in him. But he's like a big, hairy, like, herding dog looking type dog. When I got him, he was supposed to be an Australian Shepherd mix. My sister's always had purebred Aussies, and I really like those dogs, but I didn't want to go for like the purebred. I wanted a rescue and all of that. So got a mutt, and he's a lot less Aussie than he was supposed to be, but he's awesome. Great dog. Best dog I've ever had. So Pirates side, we talked about a little bit off the top, but getting down to Josh Palacios, discount 2,600, 2,200. He's got 6 home runs, very limited options, 65 WRC plus and 196. Leover Piguero, do like that little power bat, 6 home runs, 4 steals in 112 plate appearances, a 198 ISO. The contact profile is okay for 2,900, 2,600, both middle infield positions, take it all day. Jack Sawinski, 3,600, 2,700, 21 home runs, their best overall power hitter, 232 ISO. Does suffer against lefties, but not necessarily against this lefty. Like we looked at yesterday, only one of his home runs against lefties, a big-time dip in his ISO against lefties. Alika Williams, Jason Delay, I'd much rather have Indy Rodriguez. We got him yesterday. Hope we get him again today. A little bit of power for the rookie catcher, much better than Jason Delay. And then Alika Williams, 2,000, 2,100, hasn't seen a price increase since his call-up because he hasn't really done anything. 211, 294, 276, 58 WRC+. Did seem like a not a highly regarded prospect by any means, but did seem like a reasonable contributor as a middle infielder for cheap pricing, but just hasn't gotten it done. So kind of a mix-in option late in Pirate stacks. So this one's no real quality, but I think all four sides of it are playable. Put both pitchers together as value options, both stacks together as value options. Both stacks were at like a 4.5 total. Vegas didn't really know what to do with this one either. So given the cheap pricing, like I said, competitive to the Danny Reyes is in a worse matchup of the world, I do think there's upside for darts of value on Angel Zerpa and Andre Jackson here. And then you're getting two crappy teams, but there's definitely going up against crappy pitching. And now we get to Coors Field with the Braves carrying a 8+ implied total. Grab the lineup. Per Labs, it's up to 8.4. That's where it was on ours too. That's right. Right, we had it 8.4, right? I don't know, we had it 8.2. This must have gone up. Did this go to 14? Nah. This probably just went up a little. Yeah, it's probably something like that. So the Braves probably just gained a little bit more ground in terms of the being favored in terms of the odds. So obviously, I don't think anybody in their right mind wants to roster Kyle Freeland in this situation. 4.26% home run rate, 9.1% barrels, only 14.7% strikeouts, a 5 ERA, a 5.13 xFIP, a 1.47 WHIP, going up against the best team in baseball by far. Even this version with Kevin Pillar and Travis d'Arnaud, two replacements, two backups in the lineup, it just doesn't matter. They're two pretty good backups. Travis d'Arnaud, as we've talked about a bunch of times, my favorite backup catcher in the league. 9 home runs on the season, a 186 ISO, 222 plate appearances, makes very, very good contact, has been a power hitting starting catcher for a number of years in his track record, and has tons of power for 4,100, 3,400. Just gives you a discounted option in that lineup. Similar with Pillar, 3,500, 2,900, 6 home runs in a limited season, only a 176 ISO, a 68 WRC plus, missed most of last year. 2 years ago, 15 home runs and 347 plate appearances, only a 90 WRC plus, mostly here for defense in the outfield, but does have a little bit of right-handed pop in that bat. Michael Harris is a star from the bottom of the lineup, 5,100, 3,800. He's up to 290, 336, 457, 12% better than average creating runs, 12 home runs, 20 steals. Costs 5,100, 3,800 in the 9th spot, and that makes total sense. Orlando Arcia, cheap shortstop on DK at 46, cheap shortstop on FanDuel at 33, 15 home runs for him, a 110 WRC plus. There's Joker, went in the other room to bark. Ozuna, up to 30 home runs on the season, a 262 ISO. Olsen, up to 43 home runs, a 322 ISO. Ronald Acuna for 7,000, more expensive than seven of your 12 pitchers on the DraftKings slate. Come here, Joker. Acuna super, super pricey, obviously crazy worth it. Not easy to get to, but theoretically easy to include in lineups because of how highly he projects, how good he is. 29 home runs, 61 stolen bases, a 166 WRC plus. Ozzie Albies, cheap relative to everybody else on the team at 5,900, 3,800. He's got 28 home runs, 11 stolen bases, one of your top second base options today, along with Glaber, along with Mookie, along with Ketel Marte. Austin Riley, one of your top third base options, 6,300, 4,200, 31 home runs, a 229 ISO, 122 WRC plus. Olsen, crazy expensive, but well worth it. 1 through 9, Braves in any combination. Just put the Braves together. Again, as we've said the last couple of days, you're just making the decision, where do I want to be relative to the field? Last 2 days, I was ahead of the field, I think, a little bit on the first day. I was a little bit behind the field yesterday, but had a lot. Today, I might want to spread out a little bit. I'm not really sure where I fall today. They're easy enough to access on FanDuel, honestly, that it's not really that limiting. DraftKings, it's a lot more difficult to get full stacks, good stacks. I'll probably be below the field again. Maybe even a little bit further below the field. Not that I think that they're not going to score a ton of runs. Not that I think that they're not the top option on the slate. They're easily the top option on the slate. But there's some spots I want to target, like that Rangers stack against that somewhat highly owned nothing pitcher, like that Dodgers stack against Brandon Pfaadt. It's going to be some interesting spots there. So I'll definitely have a ton of Braves, but I might forego a little bit of where the public will be. Got to check out what those ownership numbers look like. On the other side, Darius Vines, 6,100, 5,800, does not project well, making his major league debut. Kind of an unfair spot. Hasn't pitched much in 2023. 43 and a third innings with 28 and a third of them coming in AAA. Had a minor rehab stint in the development camp in High A. But most of the innings came in AAA. 28 and a third. Has a 2.86 ERA, but a 4.90 xFIP. But only a 21.7% strikeout rate. In 107 innings in AA last year, had a 3.95 ERA and a 3.89 xFIP with a 28.5% strikeout rate. He doesn't look like a bad pitcher. It's just limited this year, probably limited innings. Coors Field, even against a crappy Rockies team, even for price, it's a little bit difficult to justify. I just don't see it coming through. I know we said that about Charlie Morton yesterday. Charlie looked just borderline playable and came through with a good start, but I think there's a lot thinner of a path to success for this kid, where I kind of could see it for Charlie. I don't really see it for Darius Vines. Again, since he's priced similarly to the Zerpas and the Reyeses of the world, you can throw a few darts at it if you're inclined. He's probably got a shot at the win. If he can give you 5 innings, he's probably got a pretty good shot at giving you the win. So there's at least that for the money. On DK, that probably matters a little bit more than on FanDuel. Lot more limited option. He's maybe on the value board on DK, but really limited. It's Coors Field. Let's not kid each other. He's probably going to get lit. 5.45 implied run total for the Rockies. They're pulling a higher than usual run total. They suck. All their sucky numbers come including the Coors games. It's not like there's, Rockies and then Rockies at Coors that are so much better. All of their overall numbers include all these games at Coors that they play. So they're just a bad baseball team. If you're going to them, which I think you do, because it's such a small slate and because we're rostering basically everybody at the plate if we can, Charlie Blackmon, Ryan McMahon, Nolan Jones, those are your 3 priority bats. The 3 lefties, very easy to get to. They're all very affordable. 291, 377, 460 triple slash for Blackmon in limited 302 plate appearances. No real power anymore, but a 114 WRC plus gives you a 377 on base. Pretty good hit tool, pretty good ability to put the ball in play. Only a 12.6% strikeout rate and a pretty good walk rate. Tovar in between Blackmon and McMahon from the right side, 15 home runs, 8 stolen bases, but a limited 76 WRC plus. Doesn't walk at all, strikes out too much for a rookie shortstop. McMahon, their leading power bat with 22 home runs, a 209 ISO on the season from the left side. Second and third base eligibility for only $3,700 on FanDuel. Only costs $4,600. Big discount on DK for a Coors Field power bat. 12.8% barrels, 45.4% hard hits. As long as he's not facing a lefty, there's always upside for Ryan McMahon, particularly at Coors Field. So I like that spot on DK if you're going to the Rockies. Elias Diaz, 4,100, 3,200. Definitely upside on DK where you need to play catchers. Limited on FanDuel, but I think if you're going to Rockies on FanDuel, you definitely want to keep him in the lineups. 3,200, just pretend he's a first baseman. 13 home runs, a 153 ISO, and 86 WRC plus. He's a limited first baseman. He's better as a catcher, but I think he's definitely playable on both sides. Nolan Jones is their best overall hitter. 271, 353, 488 in his small 292 plate appearances. 217 ISO, 13 home runs. Good output from the lefty. Brendan Rodgers, mid-teens home runs each of the last 2 years. He's very cheap, $3,300 option at second base on DK, $2,800 on second base. Competitive position today. I know I said Torres was one of the better options there, and he is. But between Glaber, Ozzie Albies, Ketel Marte, Mookie Betts, Brendan Rodgers at Coors Field against a rookie pitcher, there's some good options at second base. Hunter Goodman at first base, 34 minor league home runs this year. 12 plate appearances in the show so far, 273 ISO, 455, 500, 727, 215 WRC plus. Again, 12 plate appearances, but 28.6% barrels, 71.4% hard hits in the limited batted ball events. That's pretty good for a kid who had 34 home runs just this year in AAA and AA. So I think he's a valuable bat. 2,900, 2,500 at first base and catcher when you're going to Rocky stacks. Probably better than Toglia or Brenton Doyle, who both really struggled in their major league experience so far. 148 plate appearances for Toglia, 25 WRC plus, 331 plate appearances for Doyle, 8 home runs, 17 steals is okay, but only a 33 WRC plus. It's a bad team, but I think they're worth going to. Braves top to bottom. Rockies, I mean, it's basically top to bottom. None of these guys are particularly bad. These guys are more limited than the top 7. This guy's more limited than the guys around him. But I think the Rockies do, oddly, given their high run total and what this lineup looks like, they do play basically from top to bottom. I wouldn't leave out anybody specifically and say, like, I wanted none of that guy or, like, try and get away from him if he came up in the lineup. Joker's here. We jinxed it. Good boy. I don't know what you're so frantic about. So bats in this one. All right, last game on deck. I don't think we have either line. Oh, we got the Diamondbacks lineup. Look at that. Drop it in here. So, talked about Ryan Pepiot a little bit off the top. 8,500 on both sites. Not exactly in the value tier. Not exactly in the expensive tier. Kind of falls in between. I think it's an interesting option. I wish he was facing somebody other than the Diamondbacks, who are a relatively low strikeout team. I don't love targeting the Diamondbacks with like middling starters. I prefer to go after them with, premium guys. But I do think Pepiot's got a lot of talent. He's got a plus changeup. As I said at the top of the show, at one point it was regarded as the best overall changeup in all of the minor leagues. And he's been really effective in his career, including 2 appearances in the show this year, both in bulk relief. 5 innings on the 19th against the Marlins. Struck out 5, allowed a run on 3 hits, 19 hitters faced. On the 24th against Cleveland, low strikeout bunch, struck out 6 in 4 innings, allowed a run on 3 hits. My question is around the pitch count. I think 85, 90 is probably pushing it. I think on a limited slate, the price isn't exactly right, but if he does rack up a handful of strikeouts and gets through 5 innings, you got a shot, particularly with the Dodgers really looking to shine against Brandon Pfaadt. I think there's upside there. I think there's potential. It's probably wrong to call it upside given how expensive he is. You're not getting a lot of value. He's more in play as a value option on the FanDuel slate, where things are a little bit more limited around those low-end guys. On DK at 85, he's just kind of an awkward fit. There's potential there, though. In the minors, Pepiot this year, he was injured for most of the season. He got hurt all the way back in the spring. Missed a lot of the season. 22 2/3 innings, 6 starts in AAA this season. He had a 28% strikeout rate. In a more complete sample in AAA last year, he had a 30.9% strikeout rate with a 2.56 ERA, but a 4.51 xFIP. He's got a little bit of issues with control from time to time. In the small sample this year, only a 2.9% walk rate is spectacular, 32.4% strikeouts. But again, that's in the 5 inning performance and the 4 inning performance put together. Last year in the show, 36 1/3 innings. He struck out 26.3%, but he walked 16.9% in that small sample. So, yeah, that's where you get into a little bit of trouble around that option because it costs $8,500. But I think on this limited slate, given how he projects for the money, he's in play. So I don't think we go away from Pepiot here. I think you can include him. I think you can get to shares of him. If he's really low owned, I think you can get ahead of the field. Brandon Pfaadt on the other side, 65, 67. I think he's in that same pool with those other guys. A little bit more high priced. But out of the low-end pitchers on this slate, the low projected guys, out of everybody, including probably Pepiot, maybe not including Pepiot, maybe these guys are the same talent. But Brandon Pfaadt is on talent better than Joey Wentz, Danny Reyes, Angel Zerpa, Andre Jackson, Darius Vines, and Kyle Freeland. He's technically the 5th or 6th best starter on this slate. Just based on his track record, his minor league pedigree, expectations for what he's going to be as he develops, what he's done in the month of August in the show. He's not that differentiated an option. The worst part about the situation easily is the fact that he's facing the Dodgers. That sucks. In August, over 5 starts, 25.6% strikeout rate with a 3.03 ERA and a 3.83 xFIP in 29 2/3 innings. Way better than the 23 2/3 he threw in May when he was a disaster. Overall for the season, that hasn't had a huge impact. He's still at a 5.91 ERA, a 4.68 xFIP, a 5.21% home run rate, 11.2% barrels, 45.1% hard hits, and 90.6 miles an hour of exit velo. Only 20.8% strikeouts. The idea that he's found his form a little bit is encouraging. It's encouraging to make the value play. I think it's easy enough to get over the field on the value play here against the Dodgers. It's really, really, really limited, though. We're talking about an extreme value dart that on a different slate would not even be on the board. We're talking about a pitcher that we've been targeting with bats for the most part this year. We're talking about a pitcher that today we're going to be targeting with bats. Just to drive the point home, Max Muncy is the overall home run pick of the day at 13.32 on the other side of this matchup. Max Muncy also only costs $4,700 on DK at third base. That's a mistake. $3,600 on FanDuel, pretty cheap. 31 home runs, a 281 ISO for max, 16.5% barrels, 47.5% hard hits. Following Will Smith, Freddie Freeman, Mookie Betts in the lineup. That's an outstanding spot for Max Muncy. Really like that option today. I think that the Dodgers win out. I think that the Dodgers' talent overwhelms Brandon Pfaadt, and he does not have a good game today. That said, I'm going to have some of him in my lineups because of the cheap pricing and because he is the exact same option as those other guys. At worst, he's the same option as Denny Reyes with more talent against a similarly bad matchup. Going to the Dodgers, though, obviously, Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, 2 MVP candidates off the top. 314, 408, 612 for Mookie with a 298 ISO, 36 homers, 10 steals, a 174 WRC plus. Freddie Freeman, just as good, 337, 412, 579 with a 241 ISO and a 167 WRC plus. 24 homers, 17 steals. They're outrageously talented. It's unfair to have those two hitters at the top of the same lineup. 15.6% strikeout rate for Mookie, 16.4% strikeout rate for Freddie. The least these guys could do would be to strike out at like a 25% clip, but they don't. They're phenomenal players. They're very expensive. Good luck getting them with the Braves. Good luck getting them with the expensive top end of the Rangers. Obviously, we've got a lot of value pitching to work with, so maybe you can make that work, but it's a tough fit. Will Smith, dynamite catcher option, 5,400, cheap on FanDuel at 3,400. Just pretend he's another first baseman. Roster him at util, don't care about it. 17 homers on this season, a 189 ISO, creating runs 26% better than average. Gets on base at a very good clip at 366, so even if Freddie clears the bases, Will Smith can reset the table for Max Muncy. You get all three of the lefties that we like for cheap prices down here to help offset the top end guys. Solid power, solid run contributions from these guys. A decent hit tool for David Peralta. Very low cost options, 28, 26, and 31 on DK, 25, 24, and 28. All three of them play the outfield. All three of them are left-handed. Pick your poison. Mix and match with any of the top four. Any combination of these three guys with any combination of those four guys gives you a good lineup. Enrique Hernandez, Michael Busch at the bottom of the lineup, kind of mix and match parts. Limited options for cheap pricing in the infield. On the Diamondbacks side, Corbin Carroll, 23rd home run of the season last night from late in the lineup, returns in the top spot today. Looks like a very good option against Ryan Pepio. I think we do roster Diamondbacks against Pepio, especially as like a hedge if we take shares of Pepio. Makes them more important to grab some Diamondbacks in other lineups. 137 WRC plus and an outstanding season for Carroll. Doesn't strike out that much at 19.3%. Kind of sets the pace for this team. Ketel Marte, 16.3% strikeout rate, 10.6% walks. If we get the version of Pepio that walks the world, these guys are dangerous. Very low strikeouts, very good walk rates. Some good walk rates down bottom of the lineup, too. Limited samples for some of these guys. Actually, not even for Jace Peterson, Geraldo Perdomo. So a lot of walks available in this Diamondbacks lineup. They could just exploit the bad version of Pepio tonight. A lot of power as well. 13 homers for Tommy Pham, 17 steals, a 116 WRC plus. Christian Walker, 28 homers, a 251 ISO, only strikes out 19.2% of the time, 11.5% barrels. Somehow only costs 4,700 at first base on DK. Take the option and run with it. I like that spot a lot. 3,600 on FanDuel. He's at an 11.13 to sit second behind Corbin Carroll's 11.35 in the home run model. Tons of power available there. Alec Thomas, 2,400, 2,200, 7 home runs, 7 steals, moderate power and speed option, limited player, 84 WRC plus over 301 plate appearances. Lourdes Gurriel comes right back with a ton of power. Limited in terms of his hit tool is on base this year, but a very good ISO. This is limiting to his WRC plus because he doesn't walk enough, but he only strikes out at a 17.1% pace and he hits everything hard, 45.5% hard hits, only 3,900, 2,900 in the outfield. He's gotten cheap. Peterson is a capable mix and match option. I like it better where you can get him at second base. Although, as we said, second base, you're not going to Ketel him over Ketel Marte that often. Little bit of sneaky power potential. 6 home runs in 381 plate appearances. Hasn't really delivered this year. Last year, 8 homers in 328. The year before, 6 homers in 302. He's just one of those guys that's like, oh, there's that sneaky lefty power bat late in the lineup. For cheap prices when he gets multi-position eligibility and nobody's on him. Kind of like a Michael Thomas or Michael A. Taylor, rather, but not as good. Jose Herrera, moderate catcher, no home runs, 1 stolen base, a 63 WRC plus. He's very cheap where you need catchers. Perdomo's interesting as a wraparound play, 3,600, 2,700, both middle infield positions, very cheap on both sides. 371 on base, sustained over the course of the season. Just put him in play, bring him right back around to this excellent top of the lineup as your 5th man. 1, 2, 3, 4, and Perdomo, not bad. Or 1, 2, 3, 4, and Lourdes Gurriel. Not bad. Like the Diamondback side, but I think I'm going to be playing some Ryan Pepio. 535. Let's round this thing out. Back over to the pitching board for the people who missed the top of the show. Let me see what's going on in the chat, see if there's any questions, anything like that. Larry says Atlanta 24% owned on DK, 42% chance of being top stack, 10% value. Interesting. Interesting. Positive leverage, depending on how you look at those things. Oh, man. I'm glad I went for the ludicrously talk up. That was a lot of talking. Andrew S., do you like any one-off on FanDuel under 2,500 more than Peralta? He's my last man in at the moment just based on the price left over. Or even Hayward over Peralta, same game, 100 less. I actually think I do prefer Hayward to Peralta in that situation. A little bit more power for J-Hay. Assuming that they're in the lineup, of course. That's your key factor there. You might not get both of them, but assuming you do, which has been their typical configuration. 12 homers on the season for Hayward, a 209 ISO. A little bit more sturdy in the contact profile, although Peralta hits the ball at a better hard hit rate in his larger sample of plate appearances. A little bit more potential to get to first base maybe from Peralta. It depends, though, on which way you want to look at it. He's got a lower on base because he walks a lot less. Hayward's got a better on base but a lower batting average because he walks a lot more. They both don't strike out that much. Hayward's probably got a little bit more pop. They're reasonably comparable, though. I don't dislike either option. If we want to talk in terms of, what was it, 2,500 or less? What about Sal Perez? Against kind of a nothing pitcher for a little bit of power upside. Depends on where you're getting him. If it's only in the outfield, then we're obviously talking about a different thing. If we're talking only outfield, Hayward's giving you your best overall home run mark. If we're talking, I guess, catchers, we've got 3 catchers projected above that when we're looking at the home runs. So that's kind of interesting. Depends on where the positioning comes in. I don't dislike the Jesus Sanchez spot, but in terms of the player talent, but I dislike the matchup that he's in going up against Eflin. Outfield is the last spot. Yeah, I would go Jason Hayward there, bud. I like that. So that was a little spoiler again for the home run board that we already looked at. What the hell? What did I do? Why is it only coming up as... I did something. There we go. I got everybody back. So as Larry was, I think, just cleaning up in the chat there. The home run pick is not necessarily the highest guy. The home run picks are just kind of arbitrary as I'm going through. It's it's statistically based. Obviously, it's using the home run model. But a lot of times, if you check the home run picks article, there's a disclaimer at the top. Like as I'm going through, if I'm looking at the Yankees, I would just be picking Aaron Judge every single day. So I actually make a pick. I say like, Volpe matchups wise, you start looking at it, half the home run rate of, the Giancarlo Stanton option, but I just don't want to always give you the most obvious guy, the guy who's going to be the most highly owned, the most chalk. So that's why I went like Mookie's going to be much more highly owned than Max Muncy is today. Muncy will be popular in Dodgers stacks, but I think given the pricing, given how well he rated out, he was one of the top overall picks anyway. So that's how I just make that determination. It's a gut pick. That uses the tools. But when I'm talking about the home run picks, those are actual picks that I'm making, not just giving you the highest ranked guy every day. Those guys would be kind of obvious like they are right here, right? Aaron Judge, Matt Olson, Mookie Betts, Max Muncy, Giancarlo Stanton, Corey Seager, Ronald Acuna, Adolis Garcia, Pete Alonso. Those are just the best home run hitters on the entire slate. And that kind of continues down through a lot of these guys. Maybe Jake Berger's a little oddball. Maybe Jose Siri's a little oddball. I have no idea why Joker's going nuts in the other room. Somebody must be out in the hallway lurking or something. All right, so that's the home run board. So that's how we do the home run picks. That's why, Mookie was higher ranked, but Muncy was the overall pick. And I do a lot of like lefty-righty thoughts and stuff like that when I make those picks. Dennis says, I wish Judge had played enough to pick him every day. You prick. Yeah, you're right. Judge would have like 65 home runs if he had played every day this year. Garrett Cole, top of the board, easy to get to going up against the Tigers. Tough to combine with the top hitting options, obviously, at the high prices, but I think well worth trying and well worth getting to in combination with a lot of the alternative stacks. He's going to be paired a lot with some of the lower end stacks. So again, just as a way of differentiating, try and force in different combinations. Maybe you go to Cole and a lower end team than even like the natural low end teams. Maybe you go to Cole and force a couple of expensive bats and take a couple dips in price and on some of your secondary stacks, and really just try and play the popularity game where you're getting Cole with different combinations than the entire field will be. Same story with like going to Brave stacks. You got to use them. They're like Larry said, they've got half the probability on other sites of being the top stack. They're our top ranked overall stack. Highest run total I think that I've ever seen in a baseball game. Just ridiculous spot for the Braves. So I think you got to focus on differentiating that. Get to it with different pitching combinations. Get to it with, potentially lower end looking secondary stacks or lower end guys who the field's not necessarily going to. Get to it with teams that attack the highly owned pitching is a good way to do it. The cut line is like way up here today, but all these guys are in play. Well, all these guys are in play. The Coors Field pitchers, I kind of leave by the wayside. If you want them, go ahead. Darius Vines is the one who would be in play. I don't think Kyle Freeland's playable at all. Darius Vines, maybe if you wanted to throw a couple darts, just calling him the same as all of these guys. There's at least the belief that the kid might be a good pitcher. We haven't seen him yet, and he's making his debut in Coors Field. So it's just a bad situation. I greatly prefer these clunky value options, bad as they are. Out of those guys, Brandon Pfaadt is the most talented, but he's in a terrible matchup against the Dodgers. He's also the most expensive. Denny Reyes is going to be the most popular. He's the cheapest, but he's also got an atrocious matchup against the Rangers. Anil Zerpa and Andre Jackson are facing one another. They're facing each other's crappy teams. There's a little bit of potential. They cost roughly the same, particularly on FanDuel, a little bit more on DK, but it's a negligible enough difference. And just because you get $1,100 in savings doesn't mean you spent it on the right bet. So there's a path for these guys to succeed, especially I feel like it's when, not if, this kid completely implodes. I just have too much respect for that Rangers lineup if he's going to be as highly owned as he was. His ownership is the critical factor going into this slate that I'm going to check first. And I encourage everybody to just check the ownership on these guys and make your decisions accordingly. Take the lower owned guys. If you can, take the guys in the worst matchups. Joey Wentz on the board for a little bit more money as a value dart, projects slightly better. Going up against the Yankees, it not getting the traditional start does take the luster away for even a value dart on the FanDuel slate, though, because he doesn't have the shot at the quality start. On DK, he does have the shot at the win as a bulk reliever. So I think he's moderately in play, but I greatly prefer the Yankee side. They excel against left-handed pitching. Pepio, in play against the Diamondbacks, but we're dealing with probably an 85-90 pitch count. Makes it difficult. This is a realistic projection for that kind of a pitch count. I don't know what the ceiling beyond that looks like, though. That's where we run into problems. Dane Dunning, not the easiest matchup in the world, but by far the most talented cheap pitcher on both sites. 7,700, 7,600. He should just be more expensive. It's not like the Mets are good. It's not like this version of the Mets is good outside of Pete Alonso, Francisco Lindor, and Brandon Nimmo, your three priority bats in that Mets lineup. So, yeah, I don't really get the Dane Dunning pricing. I like it. I don't think, again, that it's one of the 10-12 strikeout Dane Dunning performances, but 6 clean innings, a quality start, a win, and 6 or 7 strikeouts, keeping the Mets largely off the board, that's easily in play for Dunning here. These two guys are outstanding. They're facing each other. I prefer the Eflin side going up against a more limited Marlins lineup. Jesus Luzardo also gives up a little bit more power himself, and he's facing a slightly better Tampa Bay lineup with a little bit more power in it overall. But he's got the higher strikeout rate between the two, probably the higher ceiling between the two. They project out obviously very similar. They're at similar pricing. Luzardo being a little bit cheaper maybe claws him back the edge a little bit. But these are two very good, very comparable options pitching against one another. Kind of the opposite situation of this situation. And then Garrett Cole stands alone at the top of the board. So that probably means you want the Tigers, and he's going to get lit. It would be so Garrett Cole to give up 6 first inning runs, 3 home runs, and be out of this game by the third with a 10-point FanDuel score and a 2-point DK score tonight at the highest price. That would be so Garrett Cole. Tigers bats are in play. You want those lefties: Kerry Carpenter, Green, Meadows, Parker Meadows, and Spencer Torkelson, the righty. That's my 4-man Tiger stack. All right, guys. With that in mind, I am going to punch out here. Betts or Olsen? Flip a coin, Spencer. I mean, if ownership doesn't matter to you, if you've got all the money to spend and positioning doesn't matter, it's Matt Olson. but not by that wide a margin, where Mookie's probably going to be way lower owned. They're both outstanding players. It's a coin flip between them. Larry C saying I might cap Reyes at like 30 and then run with the rest. Yeah, I think that's probably not a bad idea, Larry. All right, guys. Good luck out there tonight. Somebody go win something. I will see you tomorrow. Slate starts in less than an hour. Go get them.